I mean, I truly feel like the platform of soccer offers one of the most unique platforms to affect change. I mean, it is a global game. The sport attracts a very diverse group of people, both at the youth and adult ages, unlike any other activity in a city or in our country. It just does. There's a lot that's tied in around different sports, and soccer just has. I mean, it just really does attract people from all walks of life, and I think that in itself, it it places a special responsibility on clubs and club directors and coaches to really look beyond what their responsibility is.
Welcome back, or welcome to Footy with Friends. I'm Brady Larkin, college soccer coach, passionate soccer fan, and avid learner. This is where I talk to folks around the soccer world, and it's with these conversations I aim to seek out the innovative thinkers, leaders, and game changers at all levels of the sport. Footy, soccer, football, no matter what you call it, it's a game that brings people together. And that's exactly what I hope to do. Today's guest is Tommy Park, the executive director of Alexandria Soccer Association. In his role as a youth soccer club director, Tommy has a unique vantage point to observe the growth of the sport in his club and around the DC metro region. We discuss some of the big picture trends that have developed in youth soccer over the past 10 years, and we look ahead to the next 10 years of anticipated growth. This conversation runs the gamut from talking about grassroots soccer, the college game, and even professional clubs. It was a real treat connecting with Tommy, as we're both University of Mary Washington alumni, and I got to give credit to Tommy just for turning me on to college soccer and UMW way back when I was in my recruiting process. It was also really neat to take stock of our fellow teammates, friends, and alumni who are still involved in the soccer world. The UMW coaching tree is still flourishing, and long may that continue. The common thread of today's conversation is about finding creative ways to make lasting change and impacts in our communities. And with that, let's get stuck in. I give you Tommy Park.
Yeah, man, there's a lot of people that are still involved in the game, it's pretty cool. And the Mary Washington network is insane. So it's just, the Mary Wash coaching network is just crazy how many people got into it, man.
Yeah, I wonder where that comes from. Or it's just like-minded people. I don't know.
I feel like it was like it was super fun, but we were, at least the Roy Gordon years, we were always left with just wanting a little bit more.
Oh yeah, I got some of that too
Yeah. Okay.
for
Yeah.
a
So
year. But it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, we're better than this. What is this?
yeah. And like just feeling like, you know, there's still some like, unfinished business within soccer. So, I mean, Glenn and I jumped right in. Brian Hargrove, his brother Alex actually was the Salisbury coach.
Yeah, yeah.
Brian got into it. Yeah, obviously Danuzo. Um, there's been quite a few. That's just off the top of my head. But Lee Clement. So yeah, man, it's been good, but it's also extremely interesting, man, how the soccer, you know, uh, community has changed just in the 15 years that I've been, since Barry Wash. So, like
Oh
it's
my
it's
gosh,
insane.
it's changed like multiple times and it looks completely different every time. From like the academies to the like high school soccer, is that even a thing anymore, to now like MLS Next. It's wild. Um,
Yep.
so maybe let's start there because I really want to get into
Okay.
what you're doing with Alexandria. But can you share
Yeah.
more about like really what it is you're doing now, like your role, and maybe explain more about where you're doing it with Alexandria?
Yeah. So I mean, my official title is executive director of Alexandria Soccer. I I was the first staff member, so my title is, you know, fairly misleading in that I was lining the fields, at the beginning in 2011,
Wow.
lining the
Okay.
field, going to the rec leagues and making sure that the U5, U6s had a good warm up, and so I was really in 2011 really invested in all parts of the club, and it was a much smaller club at the time.
Yeah.
So my role then and what my role is now are two very different things, but essentially my role now is ensuring that the outcomes that our club has adopted from a strategic level, directed from our board and our leadership, kind of in line with the city of Alexandria's school system and Parks and Rec department. Those outcomes are achieved. So I kind of oversee the strategic direction of the club.
Okay. And how, I mean, looking back over the 10 years, from a small club, what it was then to what it is now, like how many players are you serving? What does it look like these days?
In terms of you, because a lot of clubs, I think it's tough when you ask, how many players are you serving, because oftentimes kids play in more than one program throughout the year.
True.
Um, so, but we kind of, because we have everything from toddlers classes, to do early childhood kind of, introducing movements and body coordination, to our rec league, which hosts about 3,000 unique individuals, to our competitive program, which has 1,000 players, and then we have an adult league. So we kind of we span the whole gamut.
Right.
So we have about 6,000 unique players within the club, and
Wow.
that was 1,300 10 years ago.
Quite a bit of growth.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to see how when you improve the quality of programming and offer programs that are accessible to all, not just from their comfort level within the game, but
Hmm.
also from a um, you know logistical and economical perspective, how many people truly love soccer and want to play.
Right.
It's an amazing number.
That really is. Yeah, you hear a lot about the pay to play model, and they're like folks are critical of it because, well, there's fees involved with joining a travel soccer team or sometimes a rec soccer team. Have you found ways, has your club found ways to, I mean, clearly you have, like, how are you growing this participation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, right? I think a big headline and criticism of youth soccer in the U.S. has been the pay to play model. Um, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that be the kind of excuse as to why we don't go further, in the national team perspective,
Hmm.
or why we don't produce more world class players. I think there is 100% an element of truth to that. However, I think it's very much misguided in terms of how it can and should affect our country's model, I suppose you should say. And I also think there's people often, kind of confuse the U.S. national team and USA Soccer's mission with what responsibility community-based clubs have,
Right.
which is to use soccer as a tool to impact the community from individual perspective and a community perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
I, I guess that's kind of like the broad, and then if you kind of bring it back in terms of paying to play, I mean, ultimately, when you set up a sport, there are things that cost money, right? If it varies widely because just like anything, oftentimes the biggest cost is the human element. And
Sure.
if we have high expectations for our coaches and growing expectations
Gonna have to pay
for
them.
how qualified they are, how educated they are, and that's a big criticism, right? Why aren't we educating more coaches? That I mean, and even if you make coaching ed free, it's still a lot of time that people have to put in.
Yeah, it's you're paying with your time and energy, regardless.
Right. To get a license is a year-long process. Like, take away the $5,000 for the A or B license and make it free. Okay, that's a great point. Great,
Mm-hmm.
something that could reduce the barrier, but that's still a year. And people need to be recognized for that time, which costs money, right? So at the end of the day, if we want higher quality, the money has to come from somewhere. And I think at the end of the day, parents understand that there's a massive benefit to the programming that you're offering and are willing to pay. The challenge, and just like anything, is soccer clubs are often very similar to a private school. But we're asking as communities for them to operate like a public school.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we find models that really represent the best of both the kind of specific and high investment per player, like a private school, and the access, the open access that a public school has, so that every person, regardless of how much money they have, where they're
Mm-hmm.
from, or even what their kind of ceiling is, have access to it. So we have an access for all program. You mentioned that how we kind of grown the quality of the program while continuing to keep it accessible
Sure.
is generating resources in other ways. And this year we'll have $500,000 allocated to our Access for All programming, which includes scholarships, which includes free after school leagues, and it includes initiatives that kind of break down the barriers to participation.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So you're still trying to find ways to, like you said, make it more open and accessible and not have that barrier of entry for folks who that would be detrimental, you know?
Yes, very much so. I mean, I think that's one of our outcomes, is to never have to say no to any child, regardless of their interest or ability. So, I mean, if you stick with that and you kind of manage your resources in an effective way, you don't have to say no.
Have you found that hard in your environment? Like the DC metro area is one packed with teams, it's packed with people. The cost of living is pretty
Mhm.
high in some of those Northern Virginia, DC, like even Southern Maryland. How have you had to get creative, I guess, to make this work?
Yeah, I think it was, fortunately, there was largely a blank slate at our club, right? We were very small and we had a minuscule budget, so the way that, I mentioned the resource management piece, I think that's a part of every club's strategic decision making process, that you do have to get creative, right? You have to kind of say, hey, if I want to attract, retain, develop quality coaches, and that's not just on the competitive side,
Right.
this is, if not more important, on the recreational side, right? To make sure that a coach who may not have any experience playing understands the core inputs to make the practices and games super fun and
Hmm.
very effective in terms of introducing the basics. So that to me was like, okay, I know the inputs that can kind of move us in the right direction, but how can I find the money to do that? And I think that's just really where, diversifying the program offerings that we've had, and then looking outside the box to community partners, such as your Parks and Rec department, such as the school system,
Yeah.
to help you with certain inputs. They often share the same mission. So if you can align with people around you outside of the soccer world, by the way, I think
Yep.
people are always isolated in the soccer club network. It's just,
It's easy to fall into that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is, because we're in the same leagues. So who do you see on the sideline? You see other soccer professionals. But really, we're in a nonprofit management world where, reaching beyond that, I think, is something I've found. Talk about, you asked about the creativity part. I was pushed early on to connect with others in the nonprofit world. And
Yep.
that has allowed us to work in, a lot of industries that, affect change. They don't have anybody paying them for services. They have to find, homeless shelters,
Right.
you after school initiatives that are unfunded. They have to get creative and, do a lot with very little. So that we kind of took that approach.
Awesome. Yeah, I got the sense that the club does a lot, like you said, with the school system, and just finding ways to give back. I think you even mentioned the after school leagues, like that's free. Like
Mhm.
that's incredible. And it speaks to at least the school system piece. It speaks to your mission as educators. And
Mhm.
not, yes, you're coaching, but you're teaching probably skills that the boys and girls are gonna keep and implement far after they're done with, youth soccer.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope in my coaching days I was able to maybe give you one one or two takeaways, but probably not. I was so young. But I mean, I truly feel like the the platform of soccer offers one of the most unique platforms to affect change. I mean, it is a global game. The
Yes.
sport attracts a very diverse group of people, both at the youth and adult ages, unlike any other activity in a city or, in our country. It just does.
Yeah,
It's
nothing's close.
no,
Nothing's even close to it.
no. The culture of soccer, around soccer, every sport kind of has its own culture, style.
Yes, yes.
There's a lot that's tied in around different sports, and soccer just has, I mean, it just really does attract people from all walks of life. And I think that in itself, it places a special responsibility on clubs and club directors and coaches to really look beyond what their responsibility is. And so I think we've kind of wrecked our team, and we have an amazing team. Many of which, who Chris Arnold, who actually helped coach was, one
Yes.
of the first at the club. We were both working at DC United, and we said, hey, this is a community club that there's an appetite uh, for, enriching the sport, and using it as a tool from the board of directors. And it just is, for us, it's just as, if not more fulfilling than the state cups we won. And, now we've got kids moving on to play at the collegiate level, or on the pro track. Right.
Yeah.
So all that to us it fits in, right? It's all a part of the mix. But yeah, it's, I'm very passionate and get excited about it, but I was just at one point just coaching.
Right.
Like that was my track. I was on did the A license and the national youth, and was doing the DC United under 20s coaching, club, DeMatha, all those types of things. Now it's like I feel like I'm coaching the coaches, coaching the administrative team, and that to me is my team, and I'm
Yeah.
very much fulfilled in that way as well.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. It's a nuance difference for sure. Like the difference between you're coaching a team and now sounds like you're managing coaches who are coaching the team. Was there a moment that kind of clicked for you? Like I'm on the grind. I'm on the treadmill of coaching. Like what switched for you? Like you know what? I could see myself actually going down this path instead.
I mean, great question. I spent 5, 6 years, right, on that grind of literally coaching as much as possible. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I know you've gone through it now, right? Summer camps, club soccer, education. Obviously, you're in the collegiate environment, but I was in the high school environment, and you're just, I mean, you love it, right? You're thinking about how can you prepare the players to grow and compete and build your team in a way that is gonna, progress them. And obviously, at the high school and youth environments, it was very much to either go to college or be promoted to a pro track, right? So that was just like on that.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was just sheer, it was actually a connection through DC United's, front office from the sales side that said, that was a season ticket. An Alexandria board member was a season ticket owner, and said, "Hey, we don't really know how to develop our club." And I was connected because I was finishing, at Georgetown in the sports industry management. So that piece, that me, kind of going into that program,
Yeah.
introduced a lot of the sport management inputs. So that piqued my interest. And then once I made that connection just randomly, I was like, okay, like this job is a different track. I can still coach. Like in my mind, I was like, hey, I was teaching at the time. I would replace my teaching with the administrative functions
Uh-huh.
of the club and still coach. Like the coaching would be my passion.
Right. You didn't want to lose that.
Didn't want to lose it. And I put a lot into it. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But I realized very quickly that, a lot of the same team management and, fulfillment you get from competing on the field and preparing to compete, a lot of the same inputs were in the administrative track and building an administrative team who's, all has the same values and is driven towards a unified goal. That is fulfilling as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And you're not out there coaching anymore, are you?
I mean, I go out there a lot. Trust me. I mean, I think if I was just only doing the administrative and didn't see how it, the infrastructure connected to the field and the kids and the coaches, it would be way less fulfilling. So I go out there a lot and I interact with the players. I know a lot of them by name and I love seeing our coaches interact and kind of fine tune their own craft and we have a really kind of collaborative group here. So going out and being
Nice.
part of those conversations it is awesome. So
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, I don't know what my path ends up being. I love what I'm doing now, but it's like there are other paths, and it's interesting to learn about the different roles in the soccer world. Where you still, in a way, you can still make impacts on the players, be it directly or through the coaches. I think that's fascinating.
we need good people in the administrative leadership in the sport. And I think that because of how many people are being attracted to full-time roles or part-time, the sport is attracting a lot more people who can help with that. Because, I mean, this is the kind of the counter to not having appropriate investments, right? The pay to play model is that by having a much larger pool of resources being put into the game, both from the professional level, right, and sponsorship and selling players, but
Sure.
also from the grassroots side, it's attracting people. I think that have uh, a skill set to add to that, right? Because I think these I mean the reality is even though I should say even though we are mission driven organizations, but we are large organizations, both in number of people
Yeah.
we serve, but in the budgets we have and the responsibilities we have. We were, soccer clubs were very small operations with very little resources. Now they're large. And so the opportunities in the sport we've gone from one full-time to 15 full-time staff in 10 years. We've gone from, maybe 10 contracted paid coaches to 50 staff coaches and maybe 300 contractors. We still have that core group of 500 volunteers, that are also kind of at the heartbeat. But that's 60, 70 people that would consider themselves soccer professionals administratively and on the field.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's who would have thought that, you could spend your life trying to push the sport forward, and but we're there just in that's just in 10 years. And our club is unique in some ways in terms of the speed of growth, but not there's 10 other clubs our size, like you mentioned, within.
Yeah, right down the road, I'm sure. Like, it's
Oh yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Okay, folks, I want to take a moment to share with you my new blog, footyfriendsteam.com. If you're digging on the content from my guests, this blog is the perfect place to take a deeper dive into more material on leadership, teamwork, and innovative thinking. Some of it about soccer, some very loosely related, all of it from the heart. There will also be some exclusive content shared directly to the blog, including extended interviews. If you want to be the first to know about what guests are coming on, which games I'm looking forward to watching, and some of my other creative pursuits, sign up to join the Footy Friends team. This will also be the place to check out the Larkin on Liverpool segment for my reactions and takes on all things Liverpool. You'll also be able to find links to buy some of the books my guests have recommended, so you can start to build your own footy reading list. Again, that's footyfriendsteam.com. Now, back to the pod. So do you see this slowing down at any point in the next 10 years? Not necessarily like your club, but just in general. Like, the growth of soccer seems like it's here to stay.
Hey man, to all your listeners out there, keep watching, and if and when you choose to have kids, have them play soccer. That's driving the change, right? Our generation
Yeah.
played at a high level. We're starting to families, and the first, there's several former teammates of mine who have kids in our club. They're coming up, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But that's the change. That's the generational change of the sport. So I think it's here to stay. I do think that the access piece, right, that we've talked about earlier, is important for clubs to refocus on. Otherwise, the Aspen Institute puts out a lot of really good data
Mm-hmm.
on the impact of youth sports, but also the participation trends. It's a little skewed right now because of the pandemic, obviously, but
Yeah.
Soccer has been trending upwards. However, they're trying to kind of sound the alarm that if we don't continue to value the impact that grassroots sport has,
Mm-hmm.
the in most introductory level, and clubs kind of just cut that out because it's less sexy to run that type of programming, and you get less accolades, I suppose.
Sure.
Then we're going to be in trouble, right? So I think we're kind of in that like, hey, folks, get back to the grassroots and
Yeah.
reinvest in that. And I think if we do that as a soccer culture, soccer community, I see a lot of optimism for the future of the sport for sure.
I hope so. But that makes perfect sense. If you have less 6-year-old soccer players, you're never going to get the 16-year-old soccer player that clubs want to really focus on. So
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I think a lot of clubs focus on how many kids do they, produce
well,
for a
yeah, I
college.
see that all the time from my perspective.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of pop it back on you. I mean, how much time do you think soccer coaches and soccer club leaders do you hear from that you're like, why are, this person could be doing something completely different right now? But I mean, obviously advocating for players, right, who are juniors and seniors it is important.
Yep.
But I think, we're fortunate to have a person who's in kind of that role, right? Creating, connections and advocating for players. I mean, I understand a lot of clubs may not have that. But it's not the necessary the measurement tool for all that all clubs need to use to place, how impactful they are.
That's a good point.
I mean, can I ask you, like,
Yeah.
what have you, like, in terms of the number of emails, have you seen an uptick over the lot, in your time coaching, in 5 years? Five? How long?
This is 7.
7. Oh my.
Yeah.
All right. So 7 years, over 7 years. How
7
much of an
years.
uptick have you seen?
I mean, I can see the growth of the game in the size of the tournaments. The just the fact that there are more showcases and tournaments that weren't even a thing when I was a junior and senior. So there's more events, which means there's probably more teams and players. The communication side of things, there's probably in general more emails, communications from clubs and the players themselves. It probably ebbs and flows. Like over the past year, everyone's at home. Everyone's blasting emails and making their highlight tapes, which I get.
Mm-hmm.
But there's again ebbs and flows in the sense of, I mean, I appreciate hearing from the student athlete themselves, like, and maybe if it's a reference from a college placement coordinator, like great. But if it's always coming from a recruiting service, which I see so many of, or just like some kind of third party, it's hard to gauge the sincerity of their interest.
Yeah.
Like, is this going to me, or is it going to me and 100 other schools?
Yeah. Well, so to that point, I mean, but you, generally speaking, I mean, those are definite indicators. Well, let me ask you this. So quantity seems to have gone up. Are you recognizing the quality as well?
Well, that's the thing. Yes and no. There's the quality. It's tough to say. Again, from the perspective of going to recruit at these big events, it seems more watered down. Where like there's still quality for sure, but now it's more selective with a few teams.
Right. So they're more spread out, but maybe a better indicator would be, has the quality of Division 3 soccer gone up overall?
Then I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
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 It's all trending upwards. It just seems that a lot of clubs don't exactly haven't really fine-tuned how to advocate for their players,
Yeah.
or get a sense of, like, if they are looking to play at the college level, there's like 1,000 schools. So
Yeah.
how do you choose which one is right for you? not every club has that nailed down yet. Which it's hard to do. I don't.
Yeah, and I think I would say that it is hard, especially because knowing, I mean, I think there's such a wide range, right? Even within Division 1 soccer or within each
Yep.
division, there's, there's Division 3 schools that, let's say top 50 Division 3 school would be, middle of the pack Division 1. I don't know, I think
Oh,
it's
for sure.
right. So I think that makes it hard, right? I think because there's so many players, it's less, and I think this is maybe like something that other sports, for various reasons, have been able to, and there's just, I mean, soccer staffs are what, three paid maybe.
Three, yeah, three if you're. I mean, you're doing well if you have two full-time assistant coaches. Like some programs, but not all. It might be two or one.
But NCAA football, I was talking about this actually with Doff Evans. He's over in Swansea now, but you know, he's been studying for his UEFA A, and or actually I think it's UEFA Pro. He's had his A for a long time, his UEFA Pro, but he was telling me he's been interviewing American football coaches,
Okay.
because there's like 40 coaches.
Per
So
staff.
yes, or stat. I mean, maybe even like
Yeah.
think of all the position coaches, and then, but that's more from the kind of, he was focused on how you have 40 positional coaches, and then somehow it all comes together like on the game days, like.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. So specialized.
But I was just bringing it up with the context of this conversation because of recruiting, right? I think
Yep.
the identification process in this country is so difficult,
Yep.
because there are more players than in football or basketball, right? I mean, there are much fewer quote unquote elite players, right? And I think identifying a soccer player is pretty nuanced, right? When you probably
Yep.
could look at 1,000 kids, right? And different coaches value different things. It's not like, are they 6'6" and 320? It's like, okay,
Right. Which might work for football or basketball, but yeah, it's way more subjective with soccer.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I remember talking to coaches about you, right? And people
Yeah.
like you have a messy, uh,
Hey, I wasn't messy. I might be his height, but
you're taller than Messi. I mean, we'll give you that. But you know what I mean. And then you have guys who were Miowa, right? Linebacker, size player, very
yeah.
impressive physically, but have a completely different player profile, right? And I think it's
Yeah.
like, hey, what player profile? And I think that's the hardest thing. You talk about connecting youth players to the collegiate game, and I know we're kind of focused. I'm just really interested in this,
Yeah.
but it. I think that's where maybe it it will become easier as college coaches really have a good grasp on what player profiles they value, so they can communicate that to youth clubs, who have a high concentration of college level players, and that will then kind of create a communication, that is more focused on. And I think this goes to education too. We talk about like being able to describe player profile and what it
Yep.
means. I mean, that piece is something that I don't even know existed in college soccer at
Right.
most colleges, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So
Yeah. And
very interesting.
and from the college coach's perspective, like there's a lot that goes into that player profile, right? Like soccer is just one piece of it, of maybe how your team sets up to play and the kind of athlete that does well in your system. But then you got to consider, oh man, there's actually the whole education side of college. And
Yeah.
are they going to get in? Are they going to thrive once they're there?
Yeah.
Do they have their major? Are they going to like the campus environment? Like, so there's a lot of factors, but yeah, the sooner college coaches can figure that out and communicate that, it's going to be smoother sailing.
Yeah. And I mean, look, let's be honest, the sport of soccer at university is not a profitable entity. So there's
No.
fewer academic exceptions made. That's just the reality. So right now, but I think if that changes, then we're going to see more academic exceptions, which leads to more specific, recruiting and more energy in recruiting, because ultimately, I mean, this is going to change anyway because players are about to get paid, NCAA players at the
Sure.
in sports. But, that's going to shake things up, if and when college soccer on a broader scale starts to become profitable. Look, University of Maryland. I mean, I'm sure you went to a lot of games
Oh
back
yeah.
in the day, but I mean, that was an amazing experience. 7,000 fans a game.
Yep.
Pro type. It was basically like the second division option for DC United.
Yes.
If that happens more often, then you have it kind of the best of both worlds, right? Which I think actually Europe and other all around the world would be like, that's the best possible scenario where the sport is profitable and connected to an academic institution.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the dream, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because the kids are still young and they don't have to sacrifice the opportunity to get an education, like you would if you go at 16 to Germany.
Right. It's something that's unique to the States for sure.
Mm-hmm. Strength of ours, but also a challenge because college soccer is only 3 months out of the year. So we
Which
got
is a whole
that too.
nother argument. Like what are we
Come on,
doing?
Brady, get on the college soccer change committee.
Hey,
It needs to happen, man. Year round.
it needs to be. It's not safe to ask players to exert themselves that frequently, um, from September to November. It's nuts.
Are you playing 2.5 games a week?
More or less, yeah. Well, yeah, 2.5 because you might play on a Sunday midweek and then like Saturday or Sunday. So yeah,
It's a lot for bodies that are still changing, you know, 18 to 22. But no, these are all kind of just really interesting dynamics that we have from the sport in this country. But I feel like there are and criticism's good, right? I know you follow and track EPL and pro high level soccer abroad.
yeah,
um the conversations here are always just seems like there's very little focus on how much the game has grown at the grassroots level, and very little focus on the number of players who aspire and are taking risks to try to play at the highest level. Whereas I feel like even 10 years ago, it was more of like, I hope I can play in college, but otherwise,
yeah,
I'll just, that's it. But now it's like you got the top 50 guys going abroad. Then you got the next, 100 that are playing college for 2 years
yeah,
and, then going pro. Then you got the next group that's, staying 4 years, having successful pro careers afterwards. And all these things are happening relatively quickly. So it's fun to see, man.
It's very exciting, and yeah, I'm obviously optimistic for it to continue. Yeah, you see it. You see it at the highest level of our game here too, with the national team and the amount of
Mm-hmm.
players playing in some of the best teams in the world. That was unheard of 10 years ago.
I'd love to I mean, there's a lot of like pro startups right now, by the way, in our area. I don't know if the same is up north, but we see a lot of like pro level, right? Trying
Yeah,
to figure out which league is gonna catch as the next
you
kind of
do
big.
see that. Yeah,
But I'm interested to see how many of those players get bumped up into USL, and then because I think we're gonna start seeing more of the like Jamie Vardy's, you
hmm
know.
starting out of the lower league and working your way up.
Yeah, I mean, you probably know more examples, but Vardy's, I feel like that's something that there's late bloomers. I think it's just, and if our country, if you're a late bloomer, you're likely out.
You're done.
You don't
Yeah,
even play past 18.
right. Yeah, I mean, you see that. You see that with, I don't know if it was Vardy's case, but like guys like Andy Robertson, and like you reach a certain age where the club's going to sign you, or they're gonna they're gonna cut ties. And yeah, Andy Robertson was bouncing around the Scottish Premiership for a few years and went to Hull City. Now he's on Liverpool. Like, okay, yeah, if a coach was a little more patient, they would have had, in this example, a world class left back. But maybe he was a couple inches too small.
You sound a little biased here. You had the
What?
Liverpool reference.
No way.
Guy just picks out the left back for Liverpool, but no, he is class. He is world class, and that's a great example, right? Player profile, physique, probably written off,
Yep.
but ends up being incredible. Incredible player all around. But yeah, man, I think all those things. I think we started this conversation talking about culture. It's changing, and it it is there's more money in it too. So when you when
Yep.
you put together the two, you start to see more infrastructure, and like anything with that type of level of infrastructure, the quality is going to skyrocket. And we're living through that. It's kind of it's a fun time to be a part of the game, and kind of see how it's changed. I'm interested to see where we're at in 10 years with pro soccer. In this country, I think it's going to be a lot different.
Yeah. Oh man, that's gonna be exciting. Let's take a quick break to talk about bookshop.org. For my fellow bookworms out there, this is something that needs to be on your radar. Using bookshop.org is the best way to support local bookstores. You can keep the ease of shopping online and rest assured that your money is going to the suppliers that deserve it. I think we're well past the point of continuing to give our hard earned money to a certain monopolistic online retailer. By design, Bookshop donates over 75% of their profit margin to stores, publications, authors, and others who make up the thriving, inspirational culture around books. The great people over at Bookshop even went one further. If you already know of an independent bookstore near you, simply use the interactive map and find that bookstore, and they'll receive the full profit off your order. Using Bookshop can help strengthen the fragile ecosystem around bookselling and keep local bookstores an integral part of our culture and communities. Bookshop is a corporation dedicated to the public good. So, next time you need a new book for a cozy day by the fire, or you want a page turner for a day at the beach, visit bookshop.org. You can even search for Footy Friends Team to find books recommended by my guest on the podcast. Happy reading. I guess to bring it full circle, I mean, back to ASA and this, what, we're almost in the spring and summer, and what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge as you're really getting back into it with really just all the programs?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like we have been fortunate, right, that our programming has largely been, in person. Kind of after the first 3-4 months of pausing all programs.
Uh-huh.
I think that it'll be interesting, right? Because right now it's still, there's with with the with the pandemic, there's a lot less engagement
Yeah.
with players. It's very much like, you know, come and go, and mostly with parents, right? Which a lot of people are always like, just drop your kid off and leave, right? Type deal. We don't want you engaged in this process. We got it. We've really shifted from that type of mindset to engaging the parent in the support process.
Okay.
And um, we've actually found, though, that you kind of asked, like, in terms of the transition, right, going into spring, summer, I actually feel like there's a net gain here in terms of how soccer coaches and soccer programming can be delivered. And I think in the coaching ed space, right? I mean, you're in the educational space. Like,
Yep.
now when it snowed in DC, last couple of weeks, a few times, we jump on Zoom. It's, the kids, they can do a video sesh, like,
Yeah.
no problem. Coaching ed, we have a Zoom session tomorrow night for all of our coaches. We would normally, like, historically think, let's just, schedule an in-person meeting. Everybody's got to drive there, half the people,
Yep.
balancing child care, whatever. So I think there's going to be a lot more video analysis has taken off in the last 18 months.
Yep.
People are, using that at the youth level for coaching ed, for player education. So I think, just like every industry, right, everybody's been forced to kind of fast forward 5-10 years in terms of, remote learning, remote education, remote, in terms of our staff. Everything right now is not everything, but let's say half of our team communicates virtually. But
Mm-hmm.
that in the end is going to help, I think.
Yeah, so much more efficient if you can cut down on costs, or it's the time to travel for some staff members. Like, the good things like that are going to stick, and I think we're already seeing that. Um, like you said, with the impromptu Zoom sessions, like, that's no problem. People are used to it now. It's not as maybe weird as it was 12 months ago. Like, wait, I'm gonna do foot skills in my basement or my garage. Like, that's kind of to be expected now. So it's, yeah, like I said, the good things stick. So hopefully
Yeah,
this does.
but it'll be good, man. I'm feeling optimistic about the health of our community, of our coaches, of our staff, of our participants. I think there's a lot to be optimistic about. I'm hoping that people feel comfortable participating in person again. There's
Yeah.
a large percentage of people who did not feel comfortable participating, which is totally reasonable. But I think because of the nature of soccer being active and largely outdoors, um, it can be one of the first things people return to safely. So I'm super optimistic about that, and I think our club, like many other clubs around us, are have been operating carefully over the last year,
Yeah.
but are really excited about being able to kind of reintroduce some of the things we've been avoiding.
Right. Yeah. We're college coaches. We're just as eager to play meaningful games again, and just get out on the recruiting trails too. See our colleagues and see some of these competitive games. Um, I mean, it makes our job fun. Even though they're long days, it's enjoyable.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of these memes now from some tournaments of the Bernie Sanders look on the sidelines.
Yeah, crossing his legs.
Yeah, the coaches are just sitting there like, uh, I got a good chuckle. But I think the community, the connection, right, the relationship piece it's fun, right? I mean, in the recruiting world, you do get to see so many of the people that you connect with, and that, I mean, I'm sure you're tired of watching player videos,
Oh yeah,
um,
I'm done.
but certainly looking forward to that. And I mean, this is another your podcast is another good example of good things coming out of
Hey,
needing to connect remotely.
that's it, man. Yeah, just
So,
trying to talk
love
to
it.
my people, and
Keep it up.
yeah, the good things stick, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, Tommy, thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming on, and yeah, that was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun connecting, and let's do it again soon.
Oh, you got it.
All right, Brady. Good chat, man.
Big love. Peace.